There are a couple of companies out there who have a different business model, financially speaking, than a traditional bank. And I'm not here to say the banks are doing it right by any stretch of the imagination. But there are companies out there who make their money by recruiting, not necessarily by offering a service. And so they certainly get paid off the service too, but the bulk of their wealth, if they're good at what they do, comes from enrolling more people into the company. So I'm not against every single person that works at those companies. There are good people who work at those companies who do well and do right by their customers, just like there's corrupt people at a bank who work at a bank, right? It doesn't make one thing all good and one thing all bad. But you really have to be careful and you really have to be aware of what you're signing up for when you sign up with one of those companies. I know that I win lots of awards for my writing, but if there was an award I could win for offending the most amount of people, like I would be a gold medalist.
Oh, what did you do now?
Really, what I want is your advice. Okay. So I'm not just like here to tell you a story. Like I genuinely want to know what you would do if you were me in this situation. So friends of mine are consciously uncoupling.
Okay.
And they've been together for a lot of years. I don't know him. I've never met him. I've known her. I love her. She is like funny and smart and has been a mentor to me in many ways. Like she's just a brilliant woman. And she spent the last, I don't know, I want to say decade and a half, but I don't know exactly, raising this man's child and being very heavily involved in their lives. And it's come to an end. I think this is the second time this has ended. So they had a second attempt at things or whatever, and it didn't work, obviously. But she wrote this beautiful Facebook post about how, like, I'm leaving this city and I'm leaving my life, and it's been an exhausting and sad few weeks, but, we're going our separate ways. And then she said, grief has taken a heavy toll on our lives. And, I've put my stuff in storage and I'm closing one door and opening another, and a new adventure awaits and whatever, right? And she just wrote this beautiful post and then was just surrounded by love from all of our friends.
Okay.
People were like, hugs to you. I'm always sad to read about an uncoupling. I wish you best in your new chapter. Come visit anytime. Just an outpouring of love for her. And so I posted and I said, I am sending you so much love. You handled this so beautifully. What a kind way to let your friends know that you are healing and that there's been a transition without it being awkward. I love that you gave us all a chance to love on you today, the way you take care of everyone else's hearts. I'm praying for peace and healing. And then, if I'm honest, some killer revenge sex and a handsome suitor to give you the love story you deserve. Now, bon voyage, right? You know that I'm joking, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're joking, but you're not really joking because you have her best interests at heart. And really, that would be amazing for her if all
Well,
of those things happened.
I don't know. I don't even really know what revenge sex is. I just don't want to type revenge bot or any of that stuff, right? And I just sort of wanted to lighten the mood, but just make her laugh, right?
Yeah.
And so she wrote, Erin Skye Kelly. Well, that made me sob. And then the little crying emoji. What a kind thing to say. I was looking for a way that was without malice. Happy I hit the mark. No revenge, none needed. I care deeply about him and want the very best for both of us. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. She's still taking the high road here.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I did not know that he is still friends with her on Facebook.
Oh, whoopsie.
Yeah. And he says, Dear Erin, whom I don't know nor care to. If
Oh,
killer revenge sex is your go-to solution for such life events, please know that there are plenty of specialists in the medical field to help you with your issues. Perhaps you should read over and over what she wrote.
no.
Now, obviously, he doesn't know me and know that I am literally just, you know what I mean? That's my sense of humor and whatever. And I don't mean anything. But
Yeah.
what do you do if you're me? Do you apologize? Do you just let it go? Do you put a ha-ha?
Well, if I'm you, I talk about it on my 5-star podcast.
No, but genuinely, like I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I'm not using their names, obviously. And she doesn't listen to the podcast. And I know he's never going to listen to the podcast.
Right.
And I'm not doing it to make fun of the situation or anything. Like I'm genuinely like, I have overstepped, obviously, in my words. And now what do? I don't want to keep bringing it up and I don't want to make it about me either, right? My gut is saying just let it go.
Yeah.
I don't need to apologize to him because I don't know him, but maybe I need to apologize to her.
Maybe privately if you feel like anything. But honestly, did anybody else comment after his comment?
No, I mean, I got, not that it's a competition, but I got 6 likes and he got 3. So I feel like enough of our mutual friends would be like, oh, Erin, there she is being definitely was inappropriate to write on
Hmm.
her wall. Like I didn't think that through, especially because she's been so mature about the breakup. I should have also been mature about the breakup.
Here is the thing about you, though. You will go to the mat and fight them till the death for the friends that you have in your life. You are girl power. You are all about this friend. You don't know him, you said. So I am fully on your side. Three-quarters of what you said was great advice and very thoughtful and meaningful. And then
But you
you
can
had to,
spoil a quarter of, like, imagine you had like
oh,
a bowl of fruit and one quarter of the bowl of fruit was spoiled. You could spoil a lot of the rest of the fruit if you leave that there. You know what I mean?
if you hadn't have said that, you wouldn't have been Aaron. It wouldn't have been an Aaron comment if you hadn't have gone that far.
Hi, Erin. This is Diana. I'm so excited I've found your course, the books, the podcasts. Love all of it. Sad to say, I found it too late. I am divorced, and I am one of those women that just wanted to walk away, and I took all the debt. This led me to bankruptcy. Also, you had mentioned previously about the financial advice, multi-level marketing companies, one of which starts with a W. I do have some accounts through them and am wondering what your advice is regarding that. Do I shift? Do I speak to a different advisor? What's your advice for somebody who's already bought in?
Well, thank you very much for listening, Diana.
Diana, our these voice messages are my very favorite. So thank you for taking time to do that for us.
I also want to apologize that you happened to leave the voice message for us on the day where I'm in the middle of offending everyone. And so today is not going to go well, I don't think, because you're talking about a company that is a little bit tricky. And there's, as Carrie would say, a lot to unpack here in this whole conversation. And I just want to first acknowledge you for your vulnerability and bravery in admitting that, yeah, I was in a relationship where I left too much on the table. And those of you that are brand new to this podcast, it's something that I see often with women leaving relationships, whether it's the partner that's leaving or whether it's your decision to leave. There's a lot of people out there who just to make the fighting stop or just to, get out of the discomfort of the uncoupling piece, they're leaving a lot of money on the table and they're taking on the burden of finances, no matter whose fault it is or whose debt it is or whatever. And I'm seeing it like in the moment, it's a sense of relief because you're like, okay, I've got a clean breakup. We each know how things are going to be divided and off we go. And what's happening is, especially in heterosexual relationships, is men are going on to build wealth and women are going on to struggle.
Mm.
And so I want to acknowledge you and I want to say I'm so sorry that that's happened to you and that you ended up in bankruptcy because of that. And what I'm really grateful for is that you're here now so that we can change this. Because if we don't, what happens for a lot of people who file bankruptcy is they end up in bankruptcy again. Bankruptcy is such a scary place for most people. The thought of going bankrupt is terrifying. So they don't go bankrupt. Now, sometimes you have to go bankrupt. Things happen. And so you have to file bankruptcy. But once that's happened, it's almost easy for somebody to file again. And we see that because by then, like the worst possible thing has happened and you lived through it. So it's not the worst possible thing anymore. So it's easier to make that same mistake. So I say that because I'm honoring you for going, I don't want this anymore. I want something completely different. And I'm now starting to look at all of my numbers and look at all of my things. And I'm going to make some new decisions, which I think is super cool.
Is that really the case that people that go bankrupt will often go bankrupt again?
Well, it is true that 100% of the people who filed bankruptcy twice have also filed it once. So,
Right.
but actually, 21%, they're saying in North America, roughly 21% of debtors who filed a consumer proposal or bankruptcy had previously gone through the bankruptcy process. So
Wow.
it does happen. Yeah. And it's going up right now, unfortunately.
That makes sense because, I mean, anytime you do something scary, it's easier to do the second time. So I could
Mhm.
see how people would be frightened about taking it on in the first place,
Yeah.
but then being okay to do it again because you've already been there.
Yeah. And what's really frightening is, from the 10 years between, this is an older statistic, but between 2009 and 2018, over 11 million, almost 12 million individuals filed bankruptcy in the US.
Wow.
So it's a lot. And so then if we look at like 20% of those people filing again, that's a lot in addition to the people who are filing for the first time. So we want to avoid it if we can, not even necessarily because it's really hard on us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, financially. Like there's a lot of costs to it that are outside of the financial costs, but also it kind of like erodes at our integrity a little bit because we all sign up for debt, that credit card, that loan, that whatever, assuming we're going to pay, and it's our word, it's our bond. And then when we can't, it feels so yucky when somebody's calling you going, "Where's my money? Where's my money?" And you're like, "I can't pay." It feels so gross. And so that does something to our worth, and it can create a money story or a money block if we're not careful. So I just say all this because I really think Diana's super cool for being like, "Okay, listen, here's a list of my mistakes. Let's work through them because I'm done with that old life. I am new Diana. I am 2024, hot, available on the market, financially savvy. Like, let's attract new life." And so I love that.
Now, basically, are you finished talking about that?
Well, I can be like, you shut me up anytime. What do you want to say?
I was just gonna say, I feel like Diana put a lot into her message that she left us. Like, don't you want to cover the other half of what she talked about?
Yeah, I do actually. Okay, so let's be really careful here because in addition to offending everybody, I could also probably get sued. So I want to be really careful here. There are a couple of companies out there who have a different business model, financially speaking, than a traditional bank. And I'm not here to say the banks are doing it right by any stretch of the imagination. But there are companies out there who make their money and whose, I guess, company employees or contractors, however we would word them, associates, let's call them, earn their money by recruiting, not necessarily by offering a service. And so they certainly get paid off the service too, but the bulk of their wealth, if they're good at what they do, comes from enrolling more people into the company. And so she's describing a company that does that when she's talking about the company she's invested with. Okay. So here's what I would tell you, Diane. You got to keep reading the book, Get the Hell Out of Debt, because it's going to make a lot more sense when you get to the chapters at the very end of the book about phase 3. And if you're in the online program, which we'll put a link in the show notes, we'd love to have you in there. Come join us because we talk a lot about this stuff on live calls together as a group. So all of that will help you with your financial literacy, which is just the little bit of piece that you're lacking here, okay? So I'm not against every single person that works at those companies. There are good people who work at those companies who do well and do right by their customers, just like there's corrupt people at a bank who work at a bank, right? It doesn't make one thing all good and one thing all bad. But you really have to be careful and you really have to be aware of what you're signing up for when you sign up with one of those companies. Do you want more? I know you do. Why wouldn't you want more?
Or
Of
what? What do I want more of?
more of this. Come hang out in the online course, Forget the Hell Out of Debt. The link is in the description. You just got to click it, sign up, and we'll see you in there. So the first thing you need to do in order to educate yourself before you make a decision as to whether or not you need to pull your money from there or not is you need to know your rate of return so you know how the investment is performing. So I can't say to you, yes, pull all of your money from there and go somewhere else because I don't know how your investments are doing. If you've had a lot of money in there and it's earning, 5% or less over the last bunch of years, well, we got to look at either moving investments or moving companies. If you've been getting really great service and your advisor is well educated and you know and understand their credentials, you might be okay. Those companies do offer training for their employees. A lot of it is sales training, but there are people who have a CFP who are working there, which is a certified financial planning designation, or other types of designations in the financial services industry that are working there. So you just need to make sure that your advisor hasn't just taken a couple of insurance courses and has a couple of like certificates printed off the printer, that they've actually been doing work and understand all of the risks and aren't just selling a company's products in order to make a profit. You need somebody that fully understands the whole picture and the whole plan. So not just the investments, but how they work with your income and your taxation and how they work like from now through your whole life in retirement and beyond. So long after you're dead, what happens and what's the best tax efficient way to pass your wealth on to someone else. So that all of those things that, form part of the decision-making process. So on that particular company's website, the one that you're with, the website actually says when they're looking to hire, it says all you need is a willingness to learn, a commitment to your business, and some out-of-pocket expenses.
Mm-hmm.
It also says business owners recruit and train other owners to work as a team. So the key word there is recruit. They state right on their website that they're not an MLM, but then they say when one agent begins to build his or her own business, they will recruit to build out their teams. In doing so, there's a compensation related to their sales of their teams. Agents train other agents. It gets a little tricky, all of that language. And I guess even with MLMs, I'm not an MLM hater. I know people who've done very well in MLMs. I had a short stint in an MLM myself. You remember, I recruited you into my little MLM.
You sure
I was
did.
making
I still love that one.
I was making a lot of money. You made none, but you used the product, so I made a lot of money.
That's right. You're welcome.
I only got out of that for a number of logistical reasons, but I also felt like it was a conflict of interest. But they paid me for a long period of time, even after I started working there. So I loved that company. I loved a lot about them, but that business model just wasn't the right business model for me. So I'm not an MLM hater. I took the money I made in that MLM and I invested it in other ways. I didn't rely on me constantly bothering my friends and family with a napkin presentation at every family outing we had in order to make my money. So I just think that's important to note that there are people in MLMs who make money, and there are a lot of people in MLMs who don't make any money. We right here, your two besties, are a representation of both those things. And okay, like it's if you love the product and you're going to use it, sure, but just make sure that you're not going into debt over and over and over again, or that you're not being put in a difficult position in order to keep this air quotes business running. Okay, that's just really important to know. So that model is actually only a slight differentiation between how traditional businesses do things, because your company, if you're traditionally employed, earns income off of your productivity. That's how it works. That's why they hire you. You're going to do things that are going to make the business more efficient and therefore make the business more profitable. And then when that stops happening, you get laid off. Okay. So the fact, though, that this company has a whole section on their website with FAQs about whether or not they are a scam, that's weird. They're like you don't see a regular financial company with FAQs about whether they're like the Bank of America isn't like, you've probably heard from people that we're a scam. Let us assure you we're not like that. It's weird, right? So I don't know that the business itself is a scam, but what I do know is that people have been scammed. That's the differentiator. And I don't want someone who's good at sales to be responsible for my financial future. I want someone who's good at details and numbers and projections and planning to be involved in my financial future. It's a very subtle difference, but unfortunately, you really have to know your advisor. So that's what I would say when you're like, what should I do? Make sure you know what's going on with your money, what you're invested in and why you're invested in it, and look at other options within the company and elsewhere and see if you can make a correlation between, this is a good idea or not, and then figure out where you would like to go to, and then ask yourself and ask the company, are there fees if I switch? Like it might mean that they put on a heavier sales tactic to get you to stay. It might mean they offer you other solutions and products, but ultimately, when you are financially literate, and you will be financially literate by the time you're finished reading both Naked Money Meetings and Get the Hell Out of Debt, because I just give you everything. I give you enough that you could have great conversations with your accountant, your lawyer, your realtor, your mortgage broker, your financial planner, and even the people at this company. And sometimes I've had people who've decided to leave a company like that. They sit down at a meeting and they realize they have a light bulb above their head. They're like, I actually know more about finances than this person I'm sitting across from. And that's always a good indicator that it's time to either leave and find a different advisor or, of course, move companies. The other piece is know the fees. So really pay attention to what the fees are and compare those fees to what other companies are charging. Because a lot of times you'll look and you'll say, oh, I'm getting 8%. But then a quarter of that, like 25% of that, is getting chewed up by fees. So it's so critical that you understand the fee process and the fee structure as well. And then the sort of last piece that I would tell you here, and it's honest to God, the most boring, and people are like, oh yeah, here she goes. We're going to hear about it again. But you need to be tracking your net worth and making sure it's increasing by watching your cash flow. That's going to do two things. It's going to prevent you from going into bankruptcy again. It's going to allow you to make decisions in advance, so you're anticipating financial challenges instead of reacting to them. And it's going to allow you to come at things from a position of power, not a position of weakness, where you're asking questions and advice from somebody else who does not know as much as you wish that they knew, but because you know nothing, or you're not paying attention to your numbers and you're not understanding the flow of cash in your life, you can't, sort of have a discussion back with them. There have been times in my life where I've, listed a property and I've worked with a realtor and I've had to tell the realtor how we're going to negotiate the deal, or I've had to tell the, lawyer why we're going to do things the way we're going to do. They'll offer advice and they're saying, okay, well, I think you should do this here. And I'll go, yes. And you're not thinking about this side over here, which is the side I'm trying to grow or the thing I'm trying to mitigate over here. And then when they have the whole picture, they're like, oh, okay, then let's do A, B, and C. But ultimately, I have to be responsible for my wealth. If I just took advice from my accountant, I would have a very low income and I wouldn't be paying hardly any tax. But then I wouldn't be able to invest in things like real estate because I wouldn't have any income to show that I was able to, you know what I mean? So there's all kinds of things that happen that you at the epicenter of your financial world have to be in the know about, so that you're, and it, when I say all this, sometimes people get overwhelmed. Well, I'll never learn all that. I'm telling you, I am only medium smart and I can do it. So you can too. And we've helped so many people do this that it's really just a matter of gaining your confidence through competence. So it's just practicing over and over again, getting to know your numbers, feeling like you know what's going on, setting a few goals, going after them, lather, rinse, repeat. Like I promise you, you can do this. Okay, so here's the last thing. Let's go over this again. You're going to track your net worth to make sure it's increasing, and you're going to watch your cash flow. So one of the ways we do this is by getting really intimate with something called the compound interest calculator. I know. We went from consciously uncoupling to pure smut because I love that compound interest calculator more than anything else on my phone. You'd see me like under a blanket at night when I can't sleep, like playing with it. And you might be like, what is she doing under there? She must be doing, something inappropriate. Nope, just running numbers.
Not doing unspeakable things, just playing with the compound interest calculator.
Yeah, so I can sleep at night, I'm telling you. But when you understand compound interest, and of course we teach all of this, it's in the book, it's in like, and I can do if you guys message me and you're like, listen, we want a podcast on this. You talk about it all the time. Teach us on a podcast. I will. You have to give it 5 stars because otherwise it's going to be the most boring podcast in the history of podcasts. But I will teach you if you want to know. I will walk you through step by step. But what happens is it allows you to see how your future decisions are impacted by your decisions today. And that's the piece I really wish you would have known back when you said, like, I didn't know you back when I was consciously uncoupling and I took on all the debt. Now, had you been understanding your net worth spreadsheet, you wouldn't have done that because you'd been like, wait a second, this isn't fair. He's getting the assets. I'm getting the debt. And when I compound all of this out in terms of the payments on the payments on the payments, and when he now gets to invest, 10 years from now, our lives are dramatically different, sometimes even 6, 7 figures different. And so what's interesting is by understanding these things, you really set yourself up so that next time you can be like, hey, I know this relationship didn't work out and it sucks, and I'm hurting and you're hurting. However, we have to figure out how to make this fair so that neither of us is in financial hardship and both of us have the resources we need in order to go on and live a great life and have a healthy retirement, because that's what we both deserve.
I have a question about financial planners. Do all financial planners make a percentage of what we earn with them?
So we'll link some where I go over how to talk to your financial planner. But one of the questions you're always going to ask is, how are you paid? And it's a weird question because people feel uncomfortable asking it. But as a financial planner, they have to disclose that anyway. So you asking is not like, you have nothing to be embarrassed about. It's totally okay to ask. I'm a licensed mortgage broker. I always disclose how I get paid. And so everybody knows, I might as well tell you, I only get paid if I place a mortgage for you. So I can work with you for 6 months, run all your numbers, find all the possible scenarios for you, do everything. And if you decide to use a different mortgage broker or whatever, I don't get paid, but I'm out all of the expenses it cost me. That's the risk. That's the cost of doing business. However, I get paid not on, your mortgage. Like, you're not paying me out of your mortgage. The lender's paying me like a referral fee rather than, doing their normal channels of business. And that's true for a lot of mortgage brokers, but not true for all. Some mortgage brokers are fee-based. So you'll pay a mortgage broker, let's say $500, $1,000, and they'll place a mortgage for you. So it just depends on if it's like, but we have to disclose that. We have to disclose how we're paid. Same with financial planners. So some of them are commission-based, meaning they do make a percentage off of your investments. And some of them are fee-based. So you pay them like $250 for an hour of their time or $500 for an hour of their time. And they come up with a plan for you, and then you go and act the plan yourself. And some of them are a combination of both those things. So it really does depend on the planner and the type of planning they provide, because investment advisors are paid differently than a financial planner would be paid. And so it's just important to know the difference. And we'll link a former podcast so that you can listen to it. But it's really important to know that you have the right to ask. And that can be an important determiner for you if you're like, wow, actually, I don't like this. Like, this person, it feels to me like this person's pushing me on this product because they're going to get a bonus on this. And so you can ask, hey, why are you recommending that product? Do you get a bonus? Do you get some sort of referral incentive or an inducement or something like that? And they have to tell you.
I actually want my financial planner to tell me upfront. Hey, if you're listening and you're a financial planner, just be upfront and tell the person you're a new client how you're getting paid so that we don't have to ask that question. I feel like this is like twofold. We want to be comfortable enough to ask it, but also planners, just tell us, okay? Because
Many will. That's also a great way. Like when you're sitting down with a financial planner and they're an educator as well as a planner. So they're explaining things to you. And they sit down, they're like, here's a few things, like kind of a lay of the land discussion. That's a good financial planner because they're anticipating your questions and answering them before you ask, but not in a sales way. And they still give you time to say like, well, what about this? What about this? I don't know if y'all remember Chrissy. She was on the podcast 100 years ago. We should have her back. I just adore her so much. She's a great mom. She paid off, I think it was something like it was $70,000 to $90,000 in 11 months. It was some crazy amount of money as a one income family. So she and her husband are married, but she was a stay-at-home mom and they worked together, and she took the money and got to be such a financial expert in their lives and managed it all and got them out of debt. He's a great guy too. That makes it sound like he did nothing. He's phenomenal. He worked his tail off too. But she's a great example of somebody who shortly after all of that, like maybe a year or two after she got out of debt and she's building wealth, she sat down with her financial planner and had a conversation. And her financial planner said, wow, I've never, ever sat across from somebody who asked me so many great, knowledgeable questions. And they've got a great relationship to this day. That was many years ago. So we should touch base with her because I think she's a really great resource for people who feel like at one point, like, I know nothing about money, to being somebody so knowledgeable about their financial circumstances and how money works that they impress their financial planner.
That's impressive. She needs to teach us her ways is what she needs.
Well, and that's going to be Diana. I know it because Diana's going to ask the hard questions. Listen, Diana, it's your money. You have to remember that. Like, I think sometimes when we hire money people, we think, oh, they know more than me. They must be smarter than me. And again, that's a skill intelligence block from the book, Naked Money Meetings. So you can read up on that if you've ever felt that way. Like, this person's managing my money, but I don't have a right to ask them, or I feel silly asking them, or they might think I'm stupid. Read up on that because they have probably 50 clients that they're managing all the time, sometimes more. I've seen financial planners have 250 clients, which is crazy to me because if they're a good financial planner and they're managing money well, they should not have a massive, crazy roster of a gazillion clients. But that's me shitting all over you and them. So what we want to do is like have somebody who's like in our realm who we can ask those questions comfortably to, because it's our money and ultimately it's a job for them. So you're going to care more about the results of that money than that person is. That person's like, oh, it's 4:00 on a Friday. I wonder if I can take off early and go to the lake with my kids and do whatever, right? And you are like, well, this is keeping me up at night. I want an answer. So you have a right to ask because it's your money and you hired them. They work for you.
I was just like, I got all riled up while you were talking just then. I'm like, yes, it is our money. We have the right. All of a sudden I was like picturing myself walking into the financial planner's office with just like a poster board that says it's my money.
It is. I know. I would make you a t-shirt if you really wanted to. So Diane, I know you're going to be able to do it. I wish you much success in whatever you decide. Let us know, update us and let us know what you ended up deciding. And on top of amazing financial success, I also wish you a ton of killer revenge.